listen to me carefully, because what you are about to hear may save you years of heartbreak, confusion, and wasted emotional energy. For over a decade, I've studied human psychology, ancient philosophy, and the often unseen dynamics that govern modern relationships. And along this journey, I have discovered certain patterns so consistent, so dangerous, and yet so incredibly subtle that most people overlook them entirely. Today, I want to share with you 5 specific phrases. If a man says any one of these to you, it's not just a red flag. It's a screaming alarm, a burning building, a signal from your soul that something is very, very wrong. And yet these phrases often come dressed in the most casual conversation. They slip into your heart wrapped in charm, sometimes even wrapped in love. That's why so many women miss them. That's why these words are so dangerous, because they do not announce themselves as weapons. But make no mistake, they are. By the end of this video, you'll understand not only what these phrases are, but why they work. You'll see how emotional manipulators, consciously or unconsciously, use language to test your boundaries, erode your self-worth, and slowly bend you into a version of yourself that serves them, but starves you. Before we dive into these 5 phrases, you must first understand something that will change how you see every interaction you have with men forever. Most women have been conditioned since childhood to give the benefit of the doubt, conditioned to see potential instead of reality, to nurture instead of protect, to fix instead of walk away. You've been trained to prioritize harmony over your own instincts, to rationalize discomfort, and to silence your inner voice when something feels wrong. You've been taught to confuse patience with endurance and forgiveness with self-abandonment. But I'm here to tell you something very different. There are men out there, not all men, but some, who are emotional predators. And no, that is not an exaggeration. They do not hunt with fists or weapons. They hunt with words, with charm, with subtle manipulations that bypass your defenses and plant seeds of self-doubt deep inside you. And here's where it becomes even more dangerous. Words carry energy. The ancient Eastern master Xu Hengyi once taught, when someone speaks, they are not only transmitting information, they are transferring energy, their internal state, their intentions, their respect, or lack of it, for you. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, confused, or unsettled, even though you can't explain exactly why? That was your intuition picking up on the energetic signature of manipulation, while your logical mind tried to rationalize it away. This is why what I'm about to teach you isn't just relationship advice. This is self-defense, energetic self-defense. Because here's the truth no one tells you. The man you choose doesn't just affect your love life. He affects your friendships, your career, your family, your self-esteem, your financial stability, even your physical health. Choose wrong, and you may spend years rebuilding from the damage. Choose right, or better yet, learn how to walk away from the wrong ones early, and you create space for something beautiful, something real. That's why these 5 phrases matter so much. Because once you hear them, you will never unhear them again. And once you learn to recognize these patterns, you will begin to see with absolute clarity who honors you and who intends to control you. Understanding emotional manipulation. Before we break down the 5 phrases, you must first understand why so many people, especially women, struggle to recognize manipulation in the first place. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're naive. It's because you were conditioned to ignore your instincts. From an early age, most women are taught that their primary value lies in their ability to nurture, to accommodate, to be agreeable. You're told that good women are understanding, forgiving, and endlessly patient. You're praised for being low maintenance and easygoing, even when your needs are unmet. The world rarely celebrates women who set boundaries. It rarely rewards women who trust their gut. Instead, you're often called too emotional, too sensitive, or too much when you advocate for your own well-being. But let me tell you something, those instincts you've been taught to suppress, that is your protection. That gut feeling you sometimes dismiss as paranoia or overthinking, that is your ancient survival system screaming at you that something is not right. Manipulative men exploit this very conditioning. They Know that you've been taught to question yourself before questioning them. They know how to say just enough kind words to keep you hooked while slowly undermining your confidence. And here's the most dangerous part. Manipulation isn't always aggressive. Often it's disguised as love. It comes in the form of, "I'm just trying to help you grow. I only say this because I care. You're too emotional. You need to calm down." These statements create a subtle psychological trap. The more you grow dependent on their approval, the more disconnected you become from your own reality. This is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. When your heart and your mind are at war, your heart tells you, "I love him." Your gut tells you, "Something feels wrong." And your mind tries to reconcile the two, often by blaming yourself. But here's what most people don't understand about emotional manipulation. It's not random, it's systematic. Manipulators follow a pattern. First, they charm you. They create a false sense of safety and connection. Then, they test your boundaries, pushing just enough to see how much you'll tolerate. Finally, they destabilize your self-perception, making you question your worth and your instincts. Over time, you become easier to control, not because you lack strength, but because you've been strategically disconnected from your own power. Let me offer you a truth from Eastern philosophy that many in the modern world have forgotten. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. When you place your attention solely on someone else's needs, reactions, and validations, you starve your own intuition. You stop noticing how you feel. You stop trusting what you see. And eventually, you start believing that their version of reality is more accurate than your own. That's how emotional predators gain control, not through overt domination, but through psychological erosion. And this is exactly why recognizing these 5 phrases is so critical. Because every one of these phrases I'm about to reveal is designed to do one thing: create self-doubt. Self-doubt is the soil where manipulation grows. When you doubt yourself, you're more likely to stay, more likely to justify bad behavior, more likely to silence your needs to preserve the relationship. And here's the final painful truth. The longer you stay in a manipulative dynamic, the harder it becomes to leave. Why? Because you're not just walking away from a relationship. You're walking away from an identity you've slowly built around surviving that relationship. That's why so many women stay for years. Not because they don't see the harm, but because they've been convinced that leaving is failure. But let me tell you, leaving is not failure, it is power. Walking away from someone who manipulates you is not giving up. It's reclaiming your self-worth. And the first step toward reclaiming your power is education. Today, you're not just watching a video. You're equipping yourself with knowledge that can protect you for a lifetime. So now let's begin. Let's expose the first phrase that every emotional manipulator uses, and why, when you hear it, you should walk away immediately. Phrase 1, you're too sensitive, overreacting. Let me take you to the first, and perhaps most common phrase that serves as the entry point for emotional manipulation. You're too sensitive, or its many close relatives. You're being dramatic. You're overreacting. You're making a big deal out of nothing. At first glance, these may seem harmless. You may even brush them off, telling yourself, maybe I am being a little sensitive, but I want you to listen very carefully. This is not harmless. This is not innocent. This is the opening move in a much bigger game of psychological control. The subtle art of invalidation. When a man tells you that you're too sensitive, what he's really doing is attacking your perception of reality. He's not commenting on your emotions. He's undermining your ability to trust your emotions. Think about it. Our emotions exist for a reason. They are internal data points. When you feel hurt, uncomfortable, disappointed, or disrespected, your emotions are trying to alert you. Something here isn't right. But when someone dismisses those feelings as overreactions, they are essentially saying, you cannot trust yourself. You cannot believe your own experience. You should trust my version of reality instead. This is the beginning of emotional gaslighting. The test of self-betrayal, make no mistake. When he says, you're too sensitive, he's watching your response very carefully. Will you question yourself? Will you apologize for feeling hurt? Will you minimize your emotions to avoid making him uncomfortable? Because if you do, he now knows you are willing to betray your own emotional truth in order to preserve the relationship. That is the test. That is the moment where many women unconsciously shrink. They begin to monitor their own feelings. They begin to wonder if they are too much. They suppress their gut instincts for the sake of maintaining peace, and every time you do that, you surrender a piece of your power. The seed of self-doubt. The most dangerous part of this manipulation is not the phrase itself, it's the seed. It plants in your mind. Over time, that seed grows into a persistent, silent narrative. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe my standards are too high. Maybe I need to toughen up. Before long, you start second-guessing everything. Should I speak up? Is this worth mentioning? Am I being difficult? And that, my friend, is precisely what emotional predators want. Because the more disconnected you are from your internal compass, the easier you are to control. Emotional self-policing. As this pattern continues, you begin to emotionally self-police. You filter your feelings before you even express them. You rehearse conversations in your head, trying to find the most acceptable way to voice concerns. You start avoiding topics that might upset him, even when those topics deeply matter to you. What's happening here is subtle but devastating. You are slowly editing yourself out of your own life, and one day you wake up and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. You're anxious, disconnected, and living in a version of yourself that exists purely to make someone else comfortable. The root of shame. When someone constantly invalidates your emotions, it creates a core wound of shame. There's something wrong with me. I feel too much. I'm exhausting to be around. This shame bleeds into every area of life. You hesitate to express your needs at work. You minimize your concerns in friendships. You feel guilty for simply wanting to be heard. Over time, you become emotionally numb, not because you don't feel, but because feeling has become dangerous. The myth of emotional strength. Many women trapped in these dynamics begin to pride themselves on being strong. I don't cry anymore. I don't let things bother me. I've learned to let things go. But this isn't strength. This is survival. This is the armor you've built to protect yourself from the pain of constant invalidation. True emotional strength is not about feeling less. It's about feeling fully and trusting those feelings. The healthy alternative. Let's pause for a moment and imagine a healthy man, a conscious, emotionally mature partner, responding to your emotions. When you express hurt or discomfort, he doesn't say, "You're overreacting." Instead, he says, "Tell me more about how you feel. Help me understand what's coming up for you. I didn't realize that impacted you like that. Let's talk about it." He leans in, not out. He doesn't view your emotions as attacks. He views them as valuable insight into how to love you better, why they fear your emotions. So why do manipulative men dismiss your emotions so quickly? Because your emotions threaten their control. When you trust your feelings, you set boundaries. When you honor your truth, you speak up. When you believe your experience, you hold people accountable. In short, your emotions are your greatest defense against manipulation. And that's exactly why emotional predators seek to disconnect you from them. The long-term damage. If this dynamic continues long enough, the long-term damage can be profound. Loss of self-trust, chronic anxiety, fear of intimacy, difficulty advocating for yourself in all relationships. Even physical symptoms like insomnia, fatigue, or chronic stress. Many women find themselves in therapy, years later, trying to rebuild the simple skill of trusting their own feelings. They struggle to answer questions like, "How do you feel right now? What do you want? What do you need?" Because they've spent so long focused on how to not upset someone else. The truth you must remember. So let me leave you with this truth. Your emotions are not problems to be fixed. They are signals to be honored. Feeling deeply is not a weakness. Expressing your truth is not an attack. Speaking up does not make you too sensitive. It makes you alive. It makes you connected. It makes you human. Any man who makes you feel like your emotions are burdens is showing you who he is. Believe him. Walk away. Not because you're too sensitive, but because you are finally sensitive enough to yourself. Phrase 2. I'm just being honest. The second phrase you must be deeply cautious of is one that disguises cruelty as virtue. I'm just being honest. Or its familiar siblings. I'm just telling you the truth. I don't want to sugarcoat things. Someone had to say it. At first glance, honesty sounds noble, even refreshing. We live in a world that values transparency. We admire people who speak their minds. But what you must understand is this. There's a world of difference between honesty that comes from love and honesty that comes from control. The weaponization of honesty. When a man uses "I'm just being honest" as a shield after saying something cruel, disrespectful, or unnecessary, what he's really doing is this. He's delivering emotional harm, then wrapping it in virtue, and finally blaming you for being hurt. In psychological terms, this is covert aggression. It's one of the most manipulative tactics because it allows him to feel powerful while appearing morally superior. You're hurt. He's just honest. Suddenly, you're the problem for not being able to handle the truth. The double bind trap. Let's break down why this tactic is so effective. When someone hurts you under the banner of honesty, you're placed in a psychological double bind. If you react, you're too sensitive. If you protest, you're afraid of the truth. If you stay silent, you internalize the pain. Either way, he wins. You either absorb the cruelty or risk being painted as someone who can't handle reality, and slowly, you begin to believe, maybe I am too fragile. Maybe I need to toughen up. Maybe I should be grateful that at least he's honest. This is not enlightenment. This is emotional conditioning. Honesty without compassion is cruelty. Let me be crystal clear. True honesty is not an excuse to harm. Real honesty considers timing, delivery, purpose, the emotional safety of the person receiving it. Honesty without compassion is not truth. It's brutality wearing a mask. If someone truly cares for you, their honesty will aim to protect your dignity, not pierce your soul. They will say, "Can I share something sensitive with you? I want to be careful how I say this because I value how you feel. I'm sharing this because I believe it may help us grow." Their honesty builds you. It does not break you. The erosion of self-worth. When you repeatedly experience harsh truth-telling under the guise of honesty, it chips away at your self-worth. You begin to expect criticism in every conversation. You brace yourself before speaking. You downplay your successes to avoid being cut down to size. And even worse, you may begin to believe that love always hurts, that relationships require enduring pain, that kindness is weakness. This is how emotional predators normalize abuse, by convincing you that love must come with suffering. The control dynamic. You see, weaponized honesty isn't about transparency, it's about dominance. He gets to control the narrative. He decides what's true and what's not. He trains you to accept diminishing remarks as normal interaction. Little by little, you surrender your right to defend yourself. You start to believe that challenging his truth makes you difficult or immature, and that's exactly where he wants you, pliable, self-doubting, and compliant. Examples of weaponized honesty. Let's make this painfully clear with real examples. I'm just being honest. You've put on a lot of weight lately. Honestly, you're not as smart as you think you are. To be truthful, your career isn't that impressive. I'm only telling you this because no one else will. Notice the common thread? There's no love in these words. There's no constructive feedback. There's no mutual growth. There's only degradation wrapped in the language of virtue. Why they do it. So why do men use this tactic? Because it allows them to feel superior, avoid accountability, dismantle your self-confidence, maintain power by keeping you off balance. The more you accept their truth, the less likely you are to challenge their behavior. The more you internalize their words, the smaller you become. And in your shrinking, they find control. The healthy alternative, a healthy man, one who respects and values you, approaches honesty like this. He assesses whether what he's about to say is necessary. He asks himself whether this truth will serve your growth or only feed his ego. He prioritizes kindness over bluntness. He considers your emotional safety as much as his need to express himself. He understands that honesty is not a weapon, it's a tool for deeper intimacy. The cultural conditioning part of what makes this tactic so dangerous is cultural conditioning. Society often glorifies brutal honesty as a sign of strength, while dismissing emotional sensitivity as weakness. You hear phrases like, "At least I'm real," "I don't sugarcoat," "People just can't handle the truth these days." But what most people call real is often just unprocessed aggression. What they call raw honesty is often just emotional immaturity dressed up as virtue. Don't be fooled. Cruelty is not strength. Insensitivity is not maturity. The damage. Left behind over time. This dynamic leaves lasting scars. You doubt your own perceptions. You become hyper-vigilant, trying to avoid criticism. You lose the ability to distinguish between genuine feedback and disguised abuse. In extreme cases, you may even begin to replicate this behavior, becoming harsh with yourself and others because you've normalized cruelty as honesty. This isn't your fault. It's the natural outcome of emotional manipulation. The truth. You must hold on to let me offer you a guiding principle that will serve you for life. Honesty that lacks empathy is not truth. It is violence. You deserve love that tells the truth with tenderness. You deserve feedback delivered with care. You deserve a partner who seeks your well-being, not your submission. If a man uses "I'm just being honest" as a sword rather than a bridge, see it for what it is: a red flag, a test, a moment to choose yourself. Phrase 3. You're being controlling. Now we arrive at one of the most insidious and misunderstood tactics in emotional manipulation, the accusation of control. You're being controlling, or in its many variations. Why are you trying to control me? You always want things your way. You're too demanding. You need to chill. You're suffocating me. At first glance, this sounds like a defense of personal freedom. After all, no one wants to be controlled. But when weaponized by manipulators, this phrase serves a far more sinister purpose. It shames you for having needs. The reframing of boundaries. Let's get something clear right now. Boundaries are not control. Boundaries are healthy, necessary, and vital to any functional relationship. They are not demands. They are not ultimatums. They are not manipulations. Boundaries simply communicate. This is what I need to feel safe. This is what I require to feel respected. This is how I function at my best. In a healthy relationship, boundaries are honored, even if they're sometimes negotiated. But in a manipulative dynamic, your boundaries become the battleground. The gaslighting loop: when you express your needs, the manipulator reframes them as attempts to control him. You ask for communication. You're trying to control my time. You express discomfort. You're being too needy. You request clarity. You're suffocating me. By accusing you of control, he shifts the conversation away from his behavior and onto your alleged insecurity. Suddenly, instead of discussing his broken promises or disrespectful actions, you're defending your character. This is classic gaslighting. You begin to question, am I really asking for too much? Am I being unreasonable? Maybe I need to back off. And with every self-doubt, your boundaries shrink further. The fear of advocating for yourself. One of the most damaging effects of this manipulation is that it conditions you to fear your own voice. You hesitate before speaking up. You delay sharing concerns. You carefully calculate how to phrase every request, terrified of being labeled controlling again. And over time, you become silent, not because your needs disappeared, but because expressing them has become too risky. The cost of silence. Here's the hidden tragedy. In trying not to seem controlling, you abandon yourself. You stop voicing what matters. You suppress your discomfort. You tolerate behaviors that violate your values. You slowly normalize disrespect, convincing yourself that peace is better than confrontation. But this peace is false. It's not harmony, it's self-erasure. The manipulator's motive. So why do emotional predators use this tactic? Because it grants them three powerful advantages. Freedom without responsibility. They get to behave however they want, knowing you'll hesitate to object. Control without confrontation. By framing you as controlling, they control you indirectly, through guilt and shame, a false moral high ground. They appear as victims of your neediness, painting themselves as independent and unfairly attacked. The slippery slope. This dynamic often starts small. You ask for a simple check-in when he's running late. You express discomfort over who he's spending time with. You request quality time together. Each request is met with defensiveness. You're too much. You're being dramatic. Why can't you just trust me? And slowly, you're trained to stop requesting anything at all. What began as healthy communication devolves into silent suffering. The cultural lie of the cool girl part of what fuels this manipulation is cultural programming. Women are often taught to be the cool girl, low maintenance, easygoing, never jealous, never demanding. The cool girl doesn't have needs. She's always happy, always flexible, always accommodating. But let me tell you something. The cool girl is a myth designed to serve men's comfort, not women's well-being. Real intimacy requires real needs. Real partnership demands real conversations. You are not difficult for having standards. You are not controlling for having boundaries. You are not needy for desiring respect. The healthy alternative. In a conscious relationship, boundaries are not viewed as restrictions, but as opportunities to build trust. A healthy man responds to boundaries like this. Thank you for sharing what you need. I want to make sure you feel safe and loved. Let's find a way that works for both of us. He understands that your comfort matters just as much as his freedom. In fact, he views your needs as a roadmap to loving you better, not as threats to his autonomy. The internalization of shame. When you spend long enough in this dynamic, you may even begin to wear your self-abandonment as a badge of honor. I'm so easy to be with. I never make demands. I don't want to. Be that girlfriend. But underneath that easygoing facade is often exhaustion, loneliness, and quiet resentment. Because deep down, you know your needs are going unmet. The cost of shrinking. Here's the brutal truth. Every time you shrink your boundaries to avoid conflict, you teach him that your comfort is negotiable. Today, it's a small compromise. Tomorrow, it's a bigger violation. And eventually, you lose sight of where your boundaries ever existed. Healthy love never requires you to shrink. True partnership invites your full self, your feelings, your standards, your voice. The wake-up call. If you find yourself repeatedly accused of being controlling simply for expressing reasonable needs, hear this clearly. You are not controlling. You are communicating. You are protecting your peace. Any man who resists your boundaries is not trying to build intimacy. He's trying to avoid accountability. And if honoring your well-being makes you too much for him, he's simply too little for you. The truth. You must remember, let me leave you with this. Boundaries are not walls that push love away. They are doors that allow the right love in. The right man will never resent your boundaries. He will honor them because he honors you. If a man frames your self-respect as control, understand, that is his confession, not your failing. Walk away, not because you're controlling, but because you finally refuse to be controlled. Phrase 4. I'm not ready for a relationship, but acts like you are. Now we come to one of the most painful and deceptive forms of emotional manipulation. A tactic so subtle that many women don't even realize they've been trapped until years have passed. The phrase, I'm not ready for a relationship, or its many cousins. I don't want anything serious right now. Let's not put labels on this. Let's just see where it goes. I'm focusing on myself. Right now. At first glance, these words sound honest, even respectful. After all, isn't it better for someone to be upfront about what they want? Shouldn't you appreciate the clarity? Yes, if it stopped there. But with manipulators, it never stops there. The bait and switch, what makes this tactic so dangerous is not the statement itself, it's the behavior that follows. After declaring he's not ready for a relationship, he proceeds to call you daily, spend most of his free time with you, introduce you to friends or even family, share vulnerable details about his life, create emotional, physical, and even spiritual intimacy. In every way that matters, except words, you are in a relationship. And yet, when commitment is discussed, he retreats behind his disclaimer. I told you from the beginning, I'm not ready. This is relationship limbo, the space where your heart is fully invested, but his accountability is non-existent. The illusion of progress. The brilliance of this manipulation lies in its ability to create hope. You tell yourself, he just needs time. You think, if I keep showing him how good we are together, he'll change. You believe, he's almost there, I just need to be patient. And so you stay. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. You are emotionally married to someone who refuses to even call you a partner. The power imbalance, by keeping you in limbo, he holds all the power. He receives emotional support, physical intimacy, and companionship. He enjoys the benefits of a committed relationship without the responsibilities. He maintains the freedom to walk away at any moment without guilt because he never promised anything. Meanwhile, you absorb all the emotional risk. You invest time, energy, and your heart. You suppress your needs for clarity to avoid pushing him away. You stay loyal to a man who refuses to fully choose you. This isn't love. This is emotional extraction, the invisible contract. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. You believe you're building toward commitment. He believes he's made his boundaries clear. And because you agreed to enter the dynamic, knowing he wasn't ready, he feels justified in his non-commitment. It's a contract you never truly wanted, but feel obligated to honor. The hope trap. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of this manipulation is how hope becomes your prison. You see glimpses of potential. The way he holds you when you're sad. The sweet texts that make you feel cherished. The future plans he casually mentions. These moments keep you hooked, convinced that love is blooming slowly. But hope in this context becomes the leash that holds you captive. You're not waiting for love. You're waiting for permission to be loved fully. The self-blame cycle. When months go by without commitment, many women turn inward. Maybe I'm not enough yet. Maybe I need to prove myself more. Maybe I'm expecting too much. You start over-functioning, doing more, giving more, tolerating more, in hopes of earning what should have been freely offered. But love is not earned through sacrifice. Love is chosen through clarity, the fear of walking away. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. You fear wasting all the time you've already invested. You fear starting over. You fear losing the person you've grown attached to. And, most painfully, you fear that if you leave now, someone else will finally get the version of him who's ready. This is known as the sunk cost fallacy, the psychological tendency to stay committed to something harmful because of how much you've already invested. But staying longer won't create the commitment you seek. It only delays your healing. Why he really stays, it's crucial to understand his motivation. He enjoys the convenience of intimacy without sacrifice. He fears true commitment because it limits his options. He benefits from having you as his emotional safety net while keeping his freedom. In many cases, he's not confused, he's comfortable. And as long as you accept the arrangement, he has no reason to change. The man who is ready. Let me be clear, when a man wants you, fully, completely, and genuinely, there is no confusion. He doesn't need more time to figure it out, leave you wondering where you stand, require endless patience. He moves with clarity. He communicates his intentions. He honors your value. He makes space for you in his life, permanently. Love is not complicated when two people are emotionally ready. The emotional cost staying in limbo exacts a heavy toll. You lose years. You can never reclaim. Your self-worth erodes as you question your desirability. Your emotional bandwidth depletes, making future relationships harder. Every day you stay with someone who won't fully choose you. You delay meeting someone who would. The hardest truth. Let me offer you a truth that may hurt, but will also free you. If a man tells you he's not ready, believe him. Do not listen to his actions while ignoring his words. Do not assume your love will heal his indecision. Do not bargain for the scraps of partial commitment. His readiness is not your responsibility. His clarity is not your burden to create. The truth. You must remember. Here's your guiding light. The right man won't make you audition for love. You won't have to perform, wait, or negotiate your worth. He will meet your commitment with equal commitment. He will honor your desire for clarity. He will make you feel safe in the certainty of being chosen. If a man says, "I'm not ready," hear him, and honor yourself enough to walk away. Because waiting for someone to choose you is the slowest form of rejection. Phrase 5. You've changed. The final phrase, the most subtle, the most devastating, and the one that often goes unnoticed until long after the damage is done, is this: you've changed. Or spoken with disappointment, suspicion, or even accusation. You're not the person I fell in love with. You've really changed lately. I miss how things used to be. You're becoming someone else. At face value, it sounds like a simple observation. But when used by emotional manipulators, it's anything but simple. This phrase is designed to make you feel guilty for growing. The subconscious attack on your evolution. Let's be very clear. Growth is natural. Boundaries evolve. Desires deepen. Standards shift. This is part of becoming your fullest, most authentic self. But for emotional predators, your growth threatens their control. When you grow, you become less dependent. When you grow, you ask different questions. When you grow, you are no longer as easily manipulated. And so, when they say you've changed, what they really mean is, you are no longer who I could easily control. The desire for the old you, the manipulator, longs for the version of you that tolerated disrespect, avoided confrontation, minimized your needs, made excuses for their behavior, sacrificed your happiness for their comfort. That version of you served their needs. But as you evolve, perhaps after therapy, personal work, or simply maturing, you begin reclaiming your voice. You say no when necessary. You challenge unfair treatment. You prioritize your own well-being, and that terrifies them, because control over you depended on your willingness to shrink. The guilt trap. By framing your growth as negative change, they plant seeds of guilt. Am I being selfish? Maybe I am too focused on myself. Maybe I've changed in a bad way. And with guilt comes self-doubt. You begin to question your own evolution. Should I soften my boundaries? Should I sacrifice more? Should I make myself smaller again? This is how manipulators slowly pull you back into compliance. The fear of outgrowing. The relationship. At the heart of this dynamic is their fear, not just of losing you, but of being forced to grow themselves. Your growth exposes their stagnation. Your clarity highlights their confusion. Your strength magnifies their insecurity. Your healing reveals their avoidance. And rather than rise to meet your new level, they attack your progress. Therapy has made you cold. You used to be so much more easygoing. You've changed, and not for the better. Understand, they are not mourning the loss of you. They are mourning the loss of their control over you. The crisis of identity. What makes this manipulation so powerful is that it strikes at your core identity. You want to be loved for who you are. You want your growth to be celebrated, not punished. When someone you love implies that your evolution has made you less lovable, it creates an internal crisis. Do I continue growing and risk losing them? Or do I shrink back into who I was to keep the peace? Many women choose to shrink, not because they want to, but because love feels conditional on their compliance. The long-term damage over time, this dynamic leads to abandoning dreams and passions, silencing your voice in the relationship, compromising your career or purpose, losing friendships that encourage your growth. You become a smaller, dimmer version of yourself, not because you lack potential, but because you were made to feel guilty for expanding. And, perhaps most tragically, you apologize for becoming your best self. The healthy partner's response contrasts this with a healthy man's response to your growth. I love watching you evolve. Your confidence inspires me. Let's grow together. A conscious partner doesn't feel threatened by your expansion. He feels privileged to witness it. He understands that your growth strengthens the relationship, not weakens it. Because true love is not possession. True love is partnership, the root of their fear. Manipulative partners fear growth because growth challenges their entitlement. Growth creates new standards they must meet. Growth threatens their ability to keep you dependent. Rather than rise to meet you, they try to pull you back down. The most painful part. What makes this phrase uniquely cruel is that it often comes from men who once encouraged your growth, until that growth inconvenienced them. They loved your ambition until it required time away from them. They loved your confidence until it meant saying no to them. They loved your independence until it meant making decisions they couldn't control. Their love was never for your full self. It was for the version of you that served their comfort. The truth you must hold. Let me say this with absolute clarity. Your growth is not a betrayal. Your evolution is not selfish. Your expansion is not abandonment. Any love that requires you to shrink is not love, it is ownership. True love stands beside your growth. It cheers for your success. It makes space for your evolution. The hardest decision, when faced with this manipulation, you'll reach a crossroads, shrink to keep the relationship, or walk away to protect your growth. Neither path is easy, but only one honors your highest self, because the painful truth is this: losing someone who cannot celebrate your growth is not a loss. It's a necessary clearing to make space for someone who will. The truth you must remember. Here's your guiding light. You are not changing into someone less worthy of love. You are changing into someone finally able to receive real love. Anyone who makes you feel guilty for that is showing you they were never capable of loving the real you to begin with. Walk away, not because you've changed, but because you've finally come home to yourself. The path of self-love. Now you see the full pattern. 5 phrases, 5 psychological traps, 5 ways emotional manipulators chip away at your soul, not through violence or shouting, but through language. You're too sensitive, designed to make you doubt your feelings. I'm just being honest. Designed to normalize cruelty. You're being controlling. Designed to shame you for having boundaries. I'm not ready for a relationship. Designed to extract commitment without giving it. You've changed. Designed to punish your growth. Each phrase attacks your intuition, your worth, and your power. But here's the most important truth I want you to carry forward from this entire conversation. You do not exist to shrink for someone else's comfort. You are not responsible for their growth. You are not here to heal. Men who refuse to heal themselves, convince someone to love you properly, lower your standards to preserve a fragile ego, dim your light to keep someone from feeling insecure. Love that requires your silence, your smallness, or your self-betrayal is not love. It's control disguised as affection. The true path of self-love. Self-love is not simply about bubble baths or positive affirmations. Self-love is a brutal, courageous discipline. It's walking away when staying feels easier. It's honoring your intuition even when you can't fully explain it. It's holding your standards when others call them too much. It's choosing solitude over settling for crumbs. It's trusting that what you desire isn't unreasonable, It's simply not available from the wrong person. The right love feels like peace. Let me paint a vision for you. The right man will not dismiss your feelings, weaponize honesty, accuse you for expressing your needs, extract your energy without commitment, make your growth feel like betrayal. Instead, he will create safety for your emotions, deliver truth with compassion, honor your boundaries, move toward commitment with clarity, celebrate your evolution. The right love feels like coming home to yourself, not abandoning yourself. Your energy does. Not lie as you move forward. Learn to pay attention not just to words, but to how people make you feel. Do you feel seen or invisible? Do you feel secure or anxious? Do you feel expanded or diminished? Do you feel inspired or drained? Your body keeps the score long before your mind catches up. Trust that inner wisdom. It's not paranoia, it's protection. Release the need to fix. You are not responsible for seeing potential in broken men. You are not here to rescue. You are here to receive. The greatest form of self-love is not who you choose, but who you refuse to chase. The final truth. Let me leave you with this final truth, the one your future self will whisper back to you in gratitude one day. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are not difficult to love. You are simply no longer available for less than what you deserve. Walk away from anyone who makes you question your worth. Walk toward those who celebrate it, and never, ever settle for anything less again.